Oh boy, dirt content. I can already see the sport bike boys chiming in saying, but where's the Turbo Busas at? Then on the other side, you've got your armchair off-road riders saying the stuff that we do isn't real off-road and that we're a bunch of babies. Why do we even bother? Because off-road riding is a ton of fun. It's cheap and it teaches you more than you might think. There's a reason all MotoGP riders spend their off seasons dicking around on dirt tracks, whether it's motocross, enduro, or even mountain bikes. It'll teach you what it feels like when you start losing traction at the rear wheel. It'll help you manage the bike in inconsistent conditions, and it's all happening at lower speeds on relatively soft surfaces, so when you do have a whoopsie daisy, you won't be rubbing your tender flesh on the blacktop. And also, jumps are really fun. Oh, and by the way, these king of bikes are selling like crazy right now. It just goes to show you that if you don't like dirt riding, it means there's something probably wrong with you. Now, let's say you're a dirt-curious rider who's looking to get into this season. What should you get? Well, you've got two options, really. I'm going to ignore non-plated dirt bikes because that's a whole other world. You got two-strokes, enduro bikes, motocross bikes. There's all kinds of stuff there, and that is way more than we can cover in this video. So we're going to be talking plated bikes today. You can either go with an ADV bike or a dual sport. If you're thinking about crushing big miles or tackling some light off-road, then an ADV bike is probably what you're looking for. And conversely, if you're planning on spending more time off-road than on, you should probably check out a dual sport. These are some bikes in each category that cross off those lines, but without getting too in the weeds. Today I've selected the best bikes from both categories and assembled them into a nice list for easy digestion, and hopefully by the end of the day you'll be hanging up that race suit you only wear on the street and grabbing the keys to a bike you'll actually enjoy. Before we do though, I need to ask you something. When you hop off your bike, what do you smell like? Is it gooch juice laced with a fine layer of BO and exhaust gas? Yeah, I figured. That means you're gonna need to up your skincare game. Luckily, Manscaped has the cure for what ails you. No, I'm not just gonna shout about ball shavers for the next 30 seconds. Manscaped's new Ultra Premium collection has everything they know about skincare and making you smell nice, and they put it into one nice little box. It's got their 2-to-1 shampoo and conditioner, their body wash, aluminum-free deodorant, body spray, and just because they love you so much, a free moisturizing lip balm because it's no fun having chapped lips. Now I know what you're thinking, but Yam, I'm a dude. I wash my balls with shampoo. I don't need any of that. To which I just say, try it. Trust me, it'll be worth spending an extra few seconds in the shower. Use the right tool for the job, and with the Ultra Premium collection, it's like a chest full of beta tools, but for your junk. Click that link below and get 20% off your order automatically applied. Okay, with that out of the way, let's start off with the best dirt-capable motorcycle for an absolute beginner, the KX300. If you're getting started off-road, there's few things you're gonna want. First, you're gonna want your bike to be lightweight. It just makes life so much easier. Secondly, you want it to be a cheap bike that's just gonna work. Third, you'll probably want a seat height that's a little bit lower so you can actually feel a little bit more comfortable. A lot of people walk away from dual sports because they're too tall for them to ride comfortably. While with the KX300, Kawasaki hit the nail on the head for each of those criteria. For a scant $5,599 reduce, you can get yourself a 292cc thumper putting down an approachable 24 horsepower and 15 foot-pounds of torque at the rear wheel. I hear you typing away that is not enough power for you, and while there are other motorcycles on this list with more under their hood, they're not as cheap or as easy to learn on. The KLX weighs in at 302 pounds wet and ready to ride and has a seat height of 35.2 inches. Sure, that sounds high, but remember that when you sit on it, it'll compress a bit and it's shorter than most. Also, it's really narrow at the seams, so you can actually lean the bike over, and because it's so lightweight, you can very easily get a foot down. If you have a 28 or 30 inch inseam and have written off dual sports because you can't flat foot them, I would encourage you to try this one and most of them out. You might need to learn how to use just one foot and lean the bike over, but you'll be able to fit comfortably on this bike. If you're spite sized though, I've got other options for you to check out. Next up, it's the perfect ADV bike, the KTM Duke 390 Adventure. But Yami, Fortnite made a video saying that it's a bad ADV bike. How can you justify putting it on this list? Because if you're like most ADV riders, then its off-road shortcomings won't matter as much. Let's get some specs first though. 373cc, 44 horsepower, and 26 foot-pounds of torque with a curb weight of 370 to 380 pounds. Now, unlike most true off-road bikes, it's using a 1917 setup on cast aluminum rims, which isn't that great for hardcore off-roading. But if all you want to do is ride around on two lanes that hit the occasional gravel road or forest road, then this is a perfect bike for that. The best thing about the 390 ADV is it's actually got a decent suite of technologies built in. You have a TFT dash, a toggleable rear wheel ABS, which is super important when you want to head off-road, traction control, and a slipper clutch. You can even add an up and down quick shifter if you want. It's a bit pricey at $6,599, but if you ask me, it's worth the price of admission. Again, don't expect this bike to tear it up off-road like a dual sport, but if you want to tour and learn a little bit of off-road on a budget, then the KTM 390 ADV is a pretty solid option. But what if you want a bike that actually blends off-road performance and touring ability without costing you 5 figures? Well, then there's only one motorcycle that'll do it. It's the KLR 650. This dinosaur has been around since the late 80s, and Kawasaki tried to kill it in 2019, but then every single KLR owner the world over picked up their pitchforks. Under threat of mauling with farm equipment, Kawasaki brought back the KLR in 2021 with some updates and some things that really should have been updated. The first thing I want to mention is that the KLR is probably one of the slowest bikes on this list. In the base trim, the bike weighs in at 460-ish pounds wet and ready to ride, and it's putting down a meager 40 horsepower and 39 foot-pounds of torque. If you're thinking that an exhaust and a tune will help, think again. This motor has been made more or less the same since 2008. That includes critical flaws like the bad doohickey springs, bad heat management, oil consumption at high RPMs, and yet despite all the issues, KLR people still put down hundreds of thousands of miles on their donkeys. It's got a 21-inch front end, 7.5 inches of ground clearance, and rubber-mounted everything so you can cruise down the highway with it if you want, nice and easy. It starts at $6,699 for the base and goes all the way up to $8,000 for the adventure trim, which comes with bags and lights and a few other bits and bobs. The KLR is for a special breed of human, but if you like it, you're gonna love it. Just don't expect to go faster than 75 miles an hour. Next up, let's take a look at two dual sports that a lot of people point to as the go-to options for reliable and capable and still under the $10,000 mark. First is the venerable Suzuki DRZ 400S, a bike about as old as the KLR and stubbornly hanging on to its old school quirks. It's a carbureted 398cc thumper putting down 40 horsepower and 29 foot-pounds of torque and tipping the scales at 317 pounds wet and ready to ride. Literally nothing on the DRZ 400S is modern. It's got a 5-speed gearbox, a calculator-looking dashboard, square steel frame, and it looks like it rolled right out of the late 90s, but it just works. Off-road purists will tell you that the DRZ is way too heavy and way too lazy, but for a dual sport, you could do a whole heck of a lot worse. It's also one of the only bikes on this list where I could realistically see you making a full adventure build out of and having it do okay. When you look at bikes like the WR250, it's really gasping for air at highway speed, but the DRZ has enough on tap to get you around traffic and up to those highway speeds. It also has fully adjustable suspension, huge aftermarket, and a knowable aftermarket. With a tire swap, you can turn it into a supermoto. New or used, they're all the same from the last 20 years, so just go get one. But if you don't want to play with the carburetor, or your next best choice is the Honda CRF 300L. 286 cc's of single-cylinder fury, but producing a face-melting 27 horsepower and 20 foot-pounds of torque. Yeah, it's not as fast as the DRZ, but CRFs have been billy-goating up mountains right behind DRZ riders for forever. The CRF is lighter, cheaper, has more ground clearance, and if you ask me, I think it looks a little bit better than the DRZ. One thing I really want to communicate to y'all sport bike boys saying that these bikes are too slow for you is that you don't want to have a whole ass load of power when you hit the dirt for the first time. It actually makes it a lot harder to ride. But then if you still don't believe me and you're not convinced, take some high horsepower 450 off-road and see what happens for the first time. For anyone who actually wants to enjoy their off-road experience and learn, the CRF is a perfect choice. Oh, and before I forget, if you're interested in a CRF 300, maybe you should stay tuned to the channel and see what we got going on. Wink, wink. Okay, so those are a lot of motorcycles that are budget-friendly and beginner-friendly and all, but if you're looking to upgrade your off-road steed, what should you be looking at? Well, if you're committed to dirt life, begrudgingly riding on the street to get the next trail, and you want a bike that'll keep up with proper enduro bikes, I would recommend the KTM 500 Excf or the Husky FE 501S. They're basically the same, just one's white and one's yellow and the other's orange and white, and you know the whole thing. The Husky does have linkage suspension and a couple other changes, but that's too in the nitty-gritty for this video. In both cases, these bikes are crazy hopped up with the 510cc single putting down 45 horsepower and more torque than you know what you're going to do with. WP suspension, 13.6 inches of ground clearance, and a dry weight of 250 pounds means these bikes mean business. The crazy thing is that if you hop on it and think it's not fast enough, you can get a race ECU and make it even more coked out. Seriously, you can just put on a tune on these things and make like 60 horsepower. It's bananas. The only problem is that an engine this high strung is that it's more maintenance intensive than other bikes in the category, but it's ready to race, right? Also, that's why you get a KTM. Also, it's pretty dang pricey at $11,299 brand new, but this is a finisher bike off-road, so it is worth it, though I might be a little bit biased. More on that later. On the opposite end of the spectrum, you have the KTM 690 Enduro and Husky 701 Enduro. These are dual sports for people who want their dirt bikes to ride more like a street bike on the highway. You might be looking at pictures of this bike now and thinking to yourself, it looks an awful lot like Spite's SMCR, and you'd be right. They share the same frame, the same 693cc thumper putting down 74 horsepower and 55 foot-pounds of torque, the same tech package including an up and down quick shifter. It's got some added dirt features like off-road ABS and specially tuned off-road mode, but if you put them each next to each other on the side of the road, a normie won't be able to tell the difference. The big change from the 690 Enduros over something like the 501 is weight, however. The 690 is going to come in at about 360 pounds ready to ride versus 250 on the 501. This is a bike that you could easily build into an ADV bike and rival the Tenere 700s or Aprilia Tuaregs, but you'll have to pay more for the pleasure for both the KTM and Husky coming in at $12,499. Speaking of Tenere and Tuareg, you didn't think I'd make a list about ADV bikes and not talk about these two, right? Is it fair to keep plopping them on lists in the same entry? Not really, but they're both great options, if not the best options, in the lightweight ADV category. The T7 is Yamaha's take on the ADV bike with a bare bones approach. They put the MT-07 engine in an ADV bike frame and manufactured scarcity, and then watched as the dollars started rolling in. The T7 is putting down 74 horsepower and 50 foot-pounds of torque and tips the scale at 450 pounds. It doesn't have a bunch of intrusive tech, and while the MSRP is currently $9,999, good luck finding anyone anywhere close to that. Meanwhile, Aprilia saw the Tenere scooping up buttloads of cash-hungry hippos and said, "I'll have some of that, please." They took their 660 motor, tuned it for 80 horsepower and 52 foot-pounds of torque, popped it in a premium frame and suspension, and sprinkled tech on top of it for only $2,000 more. Again, will you be able to find one for $11,999? Probably not. But having ridden one, I think it is a solid alternative to the Tenere 700 and with some better features than the Tenere, and the front end suspension has a little bit more travel and is a little bit better to stock. And heck, with T7s going for $14,000 used, it actually might be cheaper. Rounding out the ADV bikes, we need to mention the flagship bikes. These are your Multistradas, R1250 GSs, 1290 Adventures, and the like. Today we're going to use the Harley Davidson Pan America as our pick for the year. Why? Well, because it's new and it's awesome, or Spite keeps telling me I still have not ridden one. You do have to hand it to HD, it takes a lot of balls to jump into a packed marketplace with some seriously competitive bikes with no experience. They came to play though with their 1250cc V-twin putting down 150 horsepower and 94 foot-pounds of torque. The main thing that sets the HD apart is its adaptive ride height device, which raises and lowers the ride height as you slow down or speed up. It's a nice feature that allows riders who might otherwise be intimidated by a 550-pound ADV bike so they can feel confident. As for tech, all of the bikes in this segment have a ton of features: ride modes, heated everything, adjustable suspension, quick shifters, hand job machines, off-road ABS, phone connectivity, whatever you want on a bike, chances are it is in there. The Pan Am is no different. You'll probably want the full Zoot Special version, which costs $21,000. It sounds like a lot, but all these flagship bikes kind of start around there nowadays. The last bike on this list is the final form of the dual sport or adventure bikes. You'll ride a million kinds of bikes, but eventually you'll realize that all you need is a humble TW200. That's right, I said it, the best bike ever for riding on-road and off-road is a motorcycle with a 196cc thumper putting down 16 horsepower and 11 foot-pounds of torque. Is that ledge too hard for you to climb up on your Pan America? Is your Excf too vibey on the highway? Are Hondas too dangerous for you? Get a TW200. Do you want to humiliate every other motorcycle on the road with the Chad bike of Chad bikes? Just get a dang T-Dub. No, I'm not shitposting here. All riders will eventually arrive at the TW200. That or a Turbo Busa or a Supermoto, or why not both? Fact. People didn't always say hello when they answered the phone. The first regular phone service was established in 1878, and Alexander Graham Bell suggested answering the phone with "Ahoy." Goodbye. Well, my little squid, you've made it to the end of yet another Yami Noob video. Thank you so much for watching. Just for you, got a little treat for you right over here. Brand new video for you. You can watch it, check it out. There's probably some squidding, some street riding, maybe some track riding. Maybe I'm binning my Ducati off-road. Who knows what's going on in that video? You should probably click on it and find out.